continues.
We got Neil DeGrasse Tyson coming in to the studio. Promoting StarTalk Live, Monday, November 4th at 8 p.m. Tickets can be purchased online at Ticketmaster.com. And that's here in New York City at Town Hall, right?
Sure.
Very cool. What's up, Neil?
Take a seat.
First time on our show.
Yes.
All right.
Absolutely.
We're on the air, too.
Yeah, good morning to you.
Yeah, we just pop right on. Right on the air.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I got to ask you right off the bat about Gravity, man. You got a lot of headlines
No,
about
people got all bent out of shape. I just put out a dozen tweets. I thought, I saw the movie. I enjoyed the movie.
Yeah.
And they got like a lot of stuff right. But I thought it'd just be fun to just point out a couple of things that they didn't get right.
Yeah.
And it ended up on the Today Show the next morning.
You got a lot of heat.
And on Brian Williams, the evening news. It must have been a slow news day.
That's usually what happens.
Yeah.
It even landed on Saturday Night Live Weekend Update.
Right.
So
that's good.
I think it's a good. I mean,
You got to be happy about that.
Well, no, I don't care. I don't care. I'm thinking that a few tweets could trigger this much curiosity in the media community about a movie about space.
Right.
I think that the takeaway here is that it's a good sign that people are thinking about science and care enough about it to argue.
Without rehashing it, because we haven't really done it on our show, what were some of the things wrong with Gravity?
So you're going to get me in trouble again. I'm going to list these.
Really?
That's what you're trying to do here.
You don't have to do the whole thing again.
Was it the fact there was a woman in space?
No.
I mean, Sandra Bullock's hair should have been floating in the air, obviously.
No, I think
That's the only one I figured out on my own.
Well, so I think they purposely gave her short hair because it was really long. Then it'd be obvious that it wasn't floating.
Right.
That was just to make it a little simpler for them. Plus, she either had too much mousse or it was a wig or something. But yeah, the hair should have been a little more floaty. Another thing, she's a medical doctor. That's what she is, and they made an important issue of that. But she's fixing the Hubble telescope.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
right.
No, I like me some medical doctors, but I keep them away from my telescope. That's my telescope. Excuse me.
You have this amazing technology and you're filming this amazing movie, and then you make those little weird mistakes. Because the one we brought up was how they had that small talk about, so where are you from? It's like they don't know anything about each other.
They would know everything about it.
No camaraderie.
Right. All of a sudden,
built
George
up.
Clooney's asking him, so where's your hometown?
I know.
Like,
They would know where everyone's body moles are and secret tattoos. They would know this.
Of course, at that point.
I loved it, but there was that one.
I really
thing
liked the movie, by the way. Yeah, I got to say that.
where they had the thing where he's like, "How long did you train for?" And she's like, "Oh, 6 months." So it was like she took a crash course in Hubble fixing.
Yeah.
But the movement was great. Was the movement seem realistic to you? The way they were moving?
Yeah. So the general, I mean, what the movie pioneered, it's 99% zero G movie.
Yeah.
So I said the movie has the wrong name. It should be called Zero G. Zero Gravity, not
I don't know if it's
Gravity.
going to sell tickets if it was sold that.
And then I got kind of geeky on people, and I said the movie should also be renamed Angular Momentum.
Oh, there we go.
Just to pull a little bit of physics out
Now
of
we're
like
talking.
high school.
Can you explain angular? I mean, I understand it, but they don't.
Yeah, sure.
As long as we don't get a pop quiz at the end of this.
No,
It has a lot to do with Newton's third law.
Yeah, so everything to do with Newton. So if you're in motion,
Fig.
and there's no friction with the ground or air or anything, you'll just keep moving. All right. Now, that's called just regular momentum. We know about that with cars and car accidents and things. But if you're rotating, that's called angular momentum. You can think of it as rotational momentum. Once you're rotating, you will not stop rotating until you put in a force that's the opposite of that rotation.
Yeah.
So that's what happened, which they did brilliantly with the fire extinguisher.
Right.
Yeah. She turns on the fire extinguisher, she starts rotating, as well as getting pushed to the side.
And every action has an equal and opposite reaction.
There you go. And so all you really need is, if you're in space and you have to maneuver, you have to send something away from you. You can toss something away. You could burp or any other kind of flatulence. You will recoil in the opposite direction of those flatulence. And so, but the problem is if you're in a spacesuit, it doesn't count because you're stuck in your spacesuit.
You're not getting that force.
You're not getting the fully expelled gases.
I watched one of the astronauts up in the space station take
I don't mean to get flatulence on you or this early in the morning.
No, I'm just thinking how effective I'd be up there.
You'd be spitting your ass off.
One of the astronauts up in the space station took a single hair and was obviously floating in the space station. A single hair between two fingers and pushed against a pipe that was there and was able to push her entire body away from the wall just using a single hair.
That's why when Sandra Bullock is holding on to, I don't know if you saw the movie, holding on to George Clooney, and he's dangling there at the edge. All she'd have to do is give a little tug.
Right.
And then he would drift towards her.
Right.
But no, all right? You'd think it was cliffhanging or something, and then she lets go, and then he flies away. No.
Now, if he was holding on to something that was spinning at great velocity and let go, then he would
if I remember the scene correctly, the Earth is sort of stationary out there relative to them. So they're not rapidly rotating, but that would be the case.
Right.
If you were rotating, then what we could call the centrifugal force
would throw you off.
Fly off at a tangent otherwise. And even so, he didn't go off at a tangent. So they're thinking he's dangling off a cliff. So I listed these, and then people said it's just a movie or it's fiction or this. And then I thought about it. I said no. I said
no, I loved it.
I said wait, excuse me. All right. Costume designers, for example, get awards for being precise in their period. Yeah. You don't have a 19th century Jane Austen novel and somebody walks in with tie-dyed shirt and bell-bottoms and somehow that's okay.
That'd be great.
I thought about this. Like my sister is a big fan of these 19th century, like Jane Austen films, right? And her community of fans, if the carriage is not right from that period, or if the servant says the wrong thing to the other person in the mansion, they know. They say, no, they didn't do that yet in 1888. You know? So I'm
Those
thinking
people need to get a life.
I know
that's a little too picky.
There's 19th century nerds.
Right. I know exactly right. Yeah, 19th century geeks. If they're allowed to exert that level of criticism on their film, I don't see anything different about being a scientist and doing the same thing.
I love that you did all this. And just in a fun way of mentioning it, and then all of a sudden you're like criticizing the film.
There's one thing I've been obsessed about as far as the movie goes.
What's that?
Why the frog?
The frog
at the end.
Oh,
why the frog? There's like 4 people in the movie and a frog. What does the frog represent?
Yeah, that was plus if she lands randomly out of orbit, she's not landing in a little pond where she could just swim to shore. She's going to land in the middle of the freaking Pacific Ocean. A shark will eat her, or she's going to be on an ice floe with a polar bear. So
what a stroke of luck.
Most of Earth is not will not accommodate a random drop out of orbit.
But
plus her legs
were
were
frog.
She's a 49-year-old woman, and she had Barbie legs, and I think they retouched her legs in post.
I think she supposedly stays in pretty good shape.
No, you can be in good shape, but there wasn't a single blemish. There was a lot of leg shots in this movie. You know that. You saw it. Butt shots and leg shots.
Right.
You know.
That's how she looks. I dated her for a while. She does look like that. Yeah. I didn't expect
that was
him to...
Jim J.
Nice. Can I ask you a question about the God particle? They have found it?
Yeah, the way this works is you have evidence that builds. You have a slight signal in the noise, and then you say that could be it. We need more data, and if you have more data, the signal improves relative to the noise, and say that's the signal I'm looking for. And when I say signal, I mean it could be a pulse, it could be a blip, and the blip gets stronger relative to the noise, and you reach some threshold, and you say, okay, that's what we're pretty sure is the God particle. The Higgs boson, right?
Now, what exactly does that mean if they find it or if they have it, and what exactly?
It might have been more interesting if we didn't find it. In the frontier of physics, when you're looking for things that you're pretty sure have to be there and they're not, then you go back to the drawing board. You say, "Well, there's some deep stuff we didn't get right coming into this," but my physics brethren found this, and I'm an astrophysicist. I don't look for little things; I look for big things. So they found it, and this is the particle. I don't know if you remember from the news cycle that it's a particle whose field grants mass to other particles. So if you want to be a particle, that's a good one to be, and that's how I got the name the God. No one's calling the electron the God particle, right? So it's the power it has over nature is extraordinary in this regard.
Is that what they're trying to do? They're find like the dark matter and all that stuff, and
we don't know how it all fits together. There's a lot of profound states of ignorance. We know dark matter, dark energy. There's the frontier of particle physics. Maybe at the end of the day, one answers the other, and that's happened in the past, in the history of physics. Completely distinct challenges, areas of ignorance that confront us. One gets solved as, hey, that's the answer to these other questions.
Wow.
And so that's how you know you really understand nature, when you have this cross-pollination of these research frontiers.
Yeah, there's just so much that seems not even that we don't know about, that seems out of reach to even learn about
it. That's a brilliant way to.
Of course it is.
There's the stuff
that's for hijacking my thought.
No. So here's go. So it's here's something I don't understand, and here's the question I'm going to answer. And so then you set up an experiment to answer that question. But what about the question you have yet to think to ask?
Right. Yeah.
What is the answer to that? Mm-hmm. So this is
so many of those.
There's right, and in a vast expanding universe. You have to be humble.
We can't even comprehend as humans the expanse of the universe. We can.
No, we do that all the time.
Yeah. The whole never-ending space thing alone is enough to.
No, the problem there is our brain, our primate brain, is not wired to embrace infinity. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you remember the first time I remember when I was a kid.
And you learned that shit. It creeps you out.
No, it creeps you out. I remember what Kennedy, maybe I'm older than you guys, when Kennedy died, and they set up his John F. Kennedy and had his grave, and they said, "Here's the eternal flame." Oh. It was like, what? What does that mean? You mean like Earth will be gone and this will still be burning? No, that was my first encounter with the concept of infinity. And then I said, but look, it's a little vessel and it takes energy. There's an infinite energy in there. I started getting all existential on it. But that was my first encounter with infinity. In math and in calculus, what you end up doing, I think, is just growing accustomed to it. You learn how to calculate. And once you do that, then it's not as scary. But you still want to just, you want to just chill every now and then.
I've had enough of the speed of light, by the way. I'm tired of light because like when they said that, like, even if you're like almost 99.9% of the speed of light, it would still always look like it was like you could never kind of see light traveling at the same speed as you.
And that's
really
just
frustrating.
And that's just relativity, which we discovered my previous physics brethren. when after relativity, we discovered quantum physics, which is the physics of the small, of atoms and molecules and nuclei. And that's creepier, crazier than even what relativity is. You had an accurate description there. You go near the speed of light, turn on your flashlight, it goes away from you at the speed of light. Nothing on Earth has that corresponds to that life experience. So we're discovering the universe is behaving in ways that fall outside of anything your senses ever told you was true. And so therefore you cannot invoke the normal criterion. That doesn't make sense for deciding what is right or wrong in the universe.
Yeah.
Did you get weirded out when you thought that the speed of light, when they did that test and then they opened up the experiment to people because they thought they had that, was it a neutrino that went faster than the speed of light?
Oh, you remember in the big particle accelerator in Europe, a particle accelerator that we might have had here in America until Congress canceled the budget for the superconducting super collider back in the early 1990s. Getting back to so there was the possibility that there was a particle, a neutrino. It's one of the fundamental, what we think of one of the fundamental particles of nature it was measured to have arrived at a destination before it was sent from the particle accelerator, which would mean it would be going backwards through time, moving faster than the speed of light.
Right.
Wow.
Okay. Well, no, sorry, I didn't say that right. It got there faster than a beam of light would have gotten there, and all of our theories tell us that if you manage to go faster than light, then you will be living backwards in time. We had a name for those particles called tachyons. You know the tachometer? It's in your car.
Yeah, RPM.
Yeah, your RPMs. The tachometer measures speed, and tachyon is Greek for fast, speed, and so that's where you get that word. So tachyon would be the hypothetical particle that exists faster than light. So it would have been very interesting if we had faster than light particles, FTLs, if you want to.
Yeah,
you want to get in the club.
Yeah, I talk about FTLs all the time.
When you knock on the speakeasy door, you know what FTL is. You're good.
So, do you think? Because it seems to me like the speed of light is so amazing, and we know all this stuff. But how could, since the Industrial Revolution, and what was it, Einstein that figured it out on a chalkboard? How could he have gotten like that basic thing right? Like, how can 1,000 years from now we not find things that just prove that we really have no idea right now?
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, are we just idiots today compared to what we'll know tomorrow? Not really, it turns out. And I'll tell you why. In the era of modern science, and modern meaning having an experiment, a hypothesis, you test it, you have a theory. We've been doing that for about 400 years now. When you do that, and you have an idea that's tested and testable and verified, that idea doesn't later turn out to be wrong. Once you verified it by multiple experiments, and we get your bias out of it, because you get your friend to do it, and you get someone in another country who hates you to do it, and if you all get the same answer, you have found you've landed on a new understanding of nature. So the way science generally progresses in the era of, since Galileo onwards, 1600, is if you have a better idea or a new idea, it gives you a deeper understanding of nature that encloses what you understood before. And you learn that what you understood before is just a subset of a deeper understanding of reality. And so it's not that you learn that it's wrong, it's that we learn that it's incomplete. That's how science has unfolded since then. That's why it's not that we're all just hanging around one truth. We got to go to another truth now. Now you think that's true because the press hangs out in the coffee lounges of research institutions, and they look at the very latest paper that isn't quite verified yet, and they say, "Oh, now cholesterol's good for you." "Oh, no, cholesterol's bad for you." And then you think scientists don't know what is going on in the world because they're tracking the bleeding edge where consensus has yet to emerge in the laboratory. And so you think science doesn't know, but if you back up a few steps, we're on it.
They just report on the destination and not the journey between the two theories.
Yeah, we have to understand that on the bleeding frontier, we don't know anything on the bleeding frontier.
Yeah.
But once we know it, it's in the books.
Wow.
Yeah.
What is that new telescope? Kaku talked about it.
Michio Kaku, my man, on here.
Yeah.
Oh, he's
good,
been on.
Good guy. Man, you want some mind blowing stuff? Just spend 10 minutes with him.
We have, and he lives in my building. And every time this is a running joke on the show. We've interviewed him many times, and every time I see him, he just has no memory of me whatsoever. He's so busy.
Thinking of real things.
Can't fit you into his cosmology.
Not only does he not say hi, he runs away, scared.
And you just feel like an idiot when he talks because he puts everything in terms of like, it is like, the sun is like a huge gummy bear. Like he puts things, it's like, please, you can tech it up a little for us. You don't have to dumb it down to the point of fucking, I think rinse cracker sun. And
I think Neil will say hi to us if he sees us on the street at least.
Right.
That's good.
Well, he's a theoretical physicist.
Yes, he's a theoretical physicist.
Those are probably the weird guys in the scientific community because they just kind of come up with shit that nobody has any idea.
Even you guys make fun of them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like you obviously have a personality. Kaku, not so much. So,
well, he's trying to keep it real.
But what is that? Can you turn off your brain when you're like a Kaku type, or you're constantly thinking just?
No, if you're the greatest of the scientists, we're obsessed with what they're doing. As in any great artist, think about it.
Right.
I mean, if you're in the company of someone who's made some great discovery or some new, they are in the moment, in the groove, and you're kind of irrelevant to them. So you intersect. If I may get relativity on you, you intersect each other's world lines. This is your path through time and space, and then they just keep going on.
Right.
So and the world line is a great concept. So you could be in the same place, but at different times, and you don't meet. You could exist at the same time, but at different places, and you don't meet. Those are your world lines. Only if you are in the same place and the same time do you meet. That's why you don't get smashed by trucks every time you cross the road. You make sure your world line never intersects that of a truck. Okay?
Relative to the truck.
Right, exactly.
It'd be nice if my world line intersected an attractive woman. That'd be kind of a nice collision.
Relativity is such a kind of bizarre concept to people. It's very hard to understand.
Well, like I said, it defies your common sense.
But it's understandable if you put it in terms of like if you're stopped in your car next to a bus and the bus starts moving forward and you're looking at the bus, you'll feel relative to the bus that you're going backwards.
Yeah,
you'll jam on the brakes.
Your brain got fooled, and especially if they're large objects,
Because relative to the bus, you are going backwards.
Exactly. Now, we've known pure just movement like that since Galileo.
Right.
The Einsteinian relativity, it includes all the weird stuff when you get near the speed of light.
Yes, relative to now the speed of light. That gets wacky. But basic relativity, you're in the back of a box truck that's doing 50 miles an hour, and you throw a ball.
Uh-oh, he's doing one of those word problems.
Yes.
People get the shakes now. From New York to Chicago.
The train leaves Chicago going 54 miles an hour.
The ball relative to the truck is doing 50 miles an hour, but in the real world, it's actually doing 100 miles an hour. If you throw it at 50 miles an hour in a truck doing 50.
Now, can I tell you something really obscure? I mean, just
sure.
how obscure. Are you ready for it? Okay.
Love this shit.
Blow our minds.
If you in a two-car head-on collision, if they're both going like let's say 50 miles an hour, that's a bad collision. People would not normally survive that. And you think that it's an accident that's the same thing as like 100 mile an hour going into a wall.
Right.
You might think
Yeah.
because the wall's not moving, and no, it's not.
Oh,
It's not. It's a 50 mile an hour collision. You know why?
how is that? Why?
Because if you're going 100 miles an hour into a wall, you have 100 miles an hour's worth of kinetic energy. Okay? Whereas if you smash into another car, you only have 50 miles an hour's worth of kinetic energy. The other car has 50 miles an hour's worth of kinetic energy. You both get destroyed. So the energy that would have doubly, quadruply destroyed you going into a brick wall, some of that energy is destroying the other car.
It's distributed in two cars.
You're sharing the destructive energy. That's right.
Because you think like the
So the relative speed is 100 miles an hour, but you only are damaged by the 50 miles an hour of your speed.
It's the old you can't get something for nothing.
Never. There's no free lunches in the universe.
So you're destroying two things with the energy of 100 miles an hour, but it's distributed between two things.
Yeah, that's good brain work this early in the morning.
That's great.
I wonder if anybody about to have an accident has ever comforted themselves briefly with that thought.
I've had enough physics. I'm thinking Newton's laws every moment I'm in a car. And the people, I did this once. You see it less today because there's laws requiring you wear seatbelts. But I would, in the summertime, just before it's summer, before you have the air conditioner on, but late enough so that you don't have the heater on, so people have windows open. I go up to the red light, people not wearing seatbelts, and I say, "Excuse me, have you ever taken a class in physics before?" 9 out of 10 of them say no. Because if you've had physics, Newton's laws of motion, you'd have on your seatbelt because you would fully understand how the laws of physics work.
Even in the back seat? I love that one. Nah, you're safe in the back seat.
In a cab, no one puts their seatbelt on when you get in a cab.
But front seat,
and that's what you need it most.
Yeah, it's very dangerous.
Or in a limousine.
Jimmy.
Hey, Neil, what's
you know where you don't need a seatbelt? If you're driving in like a truck. Because the seatbelt is for when your vehicle stops abruptly because it hits something else that made it stop. If a truck hits a car, the truck keeps going.
The truck, much more mass.
The larger your vehicle, the less you really need a seatbelt. That's why they don't require you wear seatbelts on buses or on ocean liners.
Right, on ocean liners. That would be, because it's going to travel further. It's going to take longer to stop because that mass has to slow down.
He knows his shit.
He knows it. My man is good.
Didn't even graduate high school.
No, my man is good.
He didn't even graduate high school.
I'm self-learned.
Hey, I got to ask you about God and religion, obviously. What's your general take on all that?
A man of science.
No, because we could discuss it for hours. I know.
You got 2 minutes.
You got 2 minutes.
Eternal damnation. What you got?
What do I got on that? All right.
I'm going to assume you're not a big religious guy.
No. Actually, about a third to 40% of scientists in the United States will pray to a God on the premise that God would intercede in their personal affairs. So being a scientist, even a productive scientist, is not synonymous with being an atheist, for example, as so many people had presumed. My issue is, I resonate with what Galileo said back in early 1600s. He looked at the Bible and noticed that his telescope taught him things about the universe that the Bible got wrong. It didn't match up.
Right.
And he came to conclude that, and I quote, "The Bible tells you how to go to heaven, not how the heavens go."
Ooh, is that a quote from Galileo? Wow.
That is a hip quote from Galileo.
That's pretty hip.
Pretty good.
So when you realize this, the issue in modern times, especially in America, where freedom to express your religion is endowed by constitutional law, that the issue is not that you can or shouldn't express your religious freedoms. It just doesn't belong in the science classroom. And so I take issue when people want to change a science curriculum to match their religious philosophies. We live in an elective democracy. If you wanted to choose to have that happen, just understand the consequences.
Right.
Consequences are the next generation will not understand how science works, and science and innovations in science and technology are the foundations of a 21st century economy.
Or the devil's lie.
If you want a country that can thrive on the economic landscape of the 21st century, just leave science what it's doing. Don't try to come in and say that you need a miracle to make something happen. Then if that's your understanding of how the physical world works, you're not really useful in the laboratory.
So how far are we peering into the universe these days?
This week.
This week, how far are we?
There's the race for what is the farthest away galaxy that anyone has ever found. And the next generation space telescope, known as the James Webb Space Telescope, to be launched in a couple of years, that will be able to see galaxies. Forget the one, what's the farthest galaxy? That's going to detect galaxies being born.
Wow.
And when you're there, you got it. All right. So basically, we've got pretty much the whole universe mapped out.
Is this? I'm sorry to interrupt you. Is this one Kaku talking about they're launching that's going to go between the sun and something?
Oh, yeah. That's probably the one. Okay. So this one has a special orbit that goes 1 million miles beyond the moon, way in deep space, far away from Earth and the interference of what we have. Because it has to, it views the universe in infrared light, which is invisible to our eyes. And infrared is emitted by anything that has a temperature. So they have to deep cool this telescope. Otherwise, it would be observing
its own heat.
Wow. And you have to so deep cool it that it disappears from its own signal. And then you can see infrared objects in the depths of the universe.
Did they figure that
Isn't
out?
that amazing? God damn.
I would launch it and just wreck everything by this big hot blob floating around. All day that would be ruined if I had my way.
Are you scared of death? Knowing what you know, does it help?
That's an interesting question. In my memoir I wrote, I ended my memoir with a brief recitation about death. And once you know that you dine upon flora and fauna your whole life, if you're vegetarian, it would just be the flora. You dine upon it, and from that you derive your nourishment. Not only your vitamins and minerals, but also your calories. Your calories keep you alive. Calories are not a bad thing. They're only a bad thing if you're in a wealthy, overfed nation. All right? Most of the world does not get enough calories. A calorie is a unit of energy that you measure, and that's what keeps your body temperature at 98.6 degrees. It's what gives you energy to move. That matters. When I die, I don't want to be cremated because that takes the energy so hard-earned that assembled into the cells of my body and just radiates it back into the atmosphere and into space. What I want is to be buried so that the flora and fauna of the earth can dine upon my body the way I have dined upon them my whole life. And only then can I justify my existence on this earth, sharing my energy back with the rest of...
be eaten by worms.
Yeah. Let the worm enjoy whatever is left of me when I'm buried. And that brings me comfort. Because I don't want to be eaten by worms. You're dead. That keeps your energy in the cycle of life on Earth.
Well, even cremation, though, wouldn't that keep the energy? It could go into
your energy
a storm cloud.
Sorry, thank you. Your energy still exists in the universe. It just doesn't nourish other life. The worm can't work with that. All you did was heat the air molecules, and then it radiates back into space.
Right.
And you want to maybe possibly trigger a butterfly effect storm with your heat.
Yes, there you go. I'm gonna.
6 months later, it's his hurricane.
A hurricane, right? Exactly.
No, so once I understood the balance of energy in the universe and energy in my body, I was comfortable with that. But also, the prospect of death compels me to work harder in my life when I'm alive, which is the notion people want to live forever. Then what's your hurry to get anything done if you live forever?
Boy, that is true.
So
right?
I think the fact that we have a limited lifespan, that we can have some understanding of when you get to middle age, you start to see that. I think that compels you to be a little more productive. And think about it. Why don't you give plastic flowers to your loved ones? You don't, because you give live flowers because you know they're going to be dead in a few days, forcing you to embrace all their beauty and all their aromas while they're there.
Wow.
That's not the
like
reason
that.
I would give live, but that's an excellent. That's much better than the reason I would have.
I like that.
Because that's where I get the results I want. But you absolutely have a much sweeter reason.
Yes.
Can I ask you about
Very fascinating.
How far back can they see with the Hubble, and how much farther back will this telescope that you're talking about see?
So now we're in like we're getting into the single digits here. So we can see low 90% of the time back to the Big Bang. And so with every next telescope now, we're incrementing 93%, 95%, 98%, 99%. There is a wall, however. There's a wall beyond which light does not penetrate. In other words, light can get in there, but there's no information coming back out. It gets all scrambled. And that's the famous cosmic background radiation. That's a wall that was set up in the universe when the universe was about 500,000 years old, about 500,000 years old. The universe has only been transparent to light since that time. If we want to see before then, we can't use light. You have to invent another kind of telescope whose information penetrates that curtain. You can use a neutrino telescope, a gravity wave telescope, or some kind of telescope yet to be imagined or invented.
Wow.
So the closest we'll get is about 500,000 years before the Big Bang.
After the Big Bang.
I'm sorry, after the Big Bang.
You were living back in time there. Yeah.
So, do you think there's other life out there?
If you study the problem
relative to what we have,
if you study the problem, you would be inexcusably egocentric to think otherwise. You look at how big the universe is, how many stars there are, how many planets we now know there would be if we look close enough to every single star. You look at what we're made of, the ingredients of life itself. They're not rare. If life on Earth were made of some isotope of bismuth, you could say, hey, we're made of some rare stuff off of that periodic table of elements. No, you get the 4 most common ingredients in the universe. We're made of 3 of them. Okay? And so we're not even made of something unusual. So you put it all together, and the more we study life on Earth, the more diverse are the conditions under which we find life to be thriving. When we grew up in this room, the biology textbook said you need a warm pond, the room temperature. You need room temperature if you like room temperature, but we have microbes that thrive in high heat, freezing temperatures, high radiation, high pressure, low pressure. This is the diversity of life. And these forms of life that like these extreme conditions, we call them extremophiles. The file is you like it. That's a nice extremophiles. That's going on here on Earth. And given that, it means it widens the net with which we cast into the universe to search for life elsewhere.
Will we ever find it in our lifetime? Next, let's say...
If we're going to find it in our lifetime, it's because, unless it comes here and visits us, if we're going to find it in our lifetime, it's because we've been rummaging around the soils of Mars or in the liquid oceans beneath the frozen surface of Jupiter's moon, Europa. NASA's mantra today is follow the water. Because any place on Earth you find liquid water, you find life. Even the Dead Sea. It's called the Dead Sea because the people who named it the Dead Sea didn't own microscopes. It just doesn't have macroscopic fishes, all right? So this just before you start naming stuff because you think you know what's going on, chill for a moment.
That's hilarious.
Can I say what you're promoting too? Because
sure.
You're an amazing guy to listen to. Neil is promoting StarTalk Live, and that's Monday, November the 4th at 8 o'clock. Tickets can be purchased, and this will sell out at Ticketmaster, or just call 800-982-2787, or at the Town Hall box office.
Is it Town Hall, Midtown, New York City?
Yes.
Yeah, that's why we have a radio show and podcast, StarTalk Radio, where normally if you have a science show, there's like the journalist host and you bring in the scientist.
Yeah.
I thought, well, the people who listen to that already know they like science because you're tuning in for the scientist. So we inverted it, and I am the host, and my guest in most cases is hewn from pop culture.
Oh, wow.
So I have a pop culture guest. That StarTalk has the double meaning there. And then I talk to that person about how science has influenced their life and livelihood. I had Jon Stewart as a guest once, and that's when I learned in college he started out majoring in chemistry.
Really?
So then I said, well, why would you ever know that, right? Because he's a guy, a talk show host. I said chemistry, so I asked him the geek question, did you have a favorite element? And that's the nice geek thing you do with it. He said, yes, I did. I said, what? He said, carbon. And I said, that's one, that's my top 3 anyway. And I said, but why for you? And he says, oh, because it's the slut of the periodic table. It can combine with all other elements every which way. So in StarTalk Radio, we celebrate science through the lens of pop culture. And in StarTalk Live, every now and then we have a live show, and we just do it on stage. And we have comedians come and help out, it's great. It's fun.
It's a podcast?
It's a podcast, and on broadcast radio as well.
Have these guys tried to get you?
I mean, seriously, no, I'm waiting for the call. Excuse me. We have like 1 million downloads a month. And I mean, we're there.
Wow.
It's feeling good too.
That's
my God.
good.
They should put you on Sirius XM.
Yeah. And then be in the hood.
Fascinating stuff.
That's
I love
right.
it.
You'd be in the hood. So there's life out there, obviously.
Oh, so my point is, getting back to your question.
But we're going to find just the
So most life on Earth is microbial. All right. You realize in 1 linear centimeter of your lower intestine lives and works more microbes than the total number of humans who have ever been born.
Oh, man.
So we think we're in charge? No. As far as they're concerned, we're just vessels for them to do their thing.
Oh, that's
we're like anaerobic vessels of fecal matter for microbes to do their thing.
Do you know how many times I've been called that?
So most of Earth is that. So if you use Earth as a template, then most planets that have life, they'll have microbial life. Will they have life that has contemplated itself? That maybe not so much. Maybe that's rarer. And also, if you throw a dart at Earth's timeline, how often will that dart land where you have what we call intelligent life? We've only been on the scene last, couple 100,000 years in our current body form.
Right, yeah.
So most of the times the dart hits the Earth, you would not get anything remotely resembling complex life. So if that's your measure of things, then out there in the universe, you stumble on a planet that could be anywhere in its own evolutionary track. We should be happy to find any kind of life at all, much less the kind that you would go and shake hands with or whatever appendage they extended your way.
What did you think of Contact? I thought that was an amazing way to.
I thought it's one of the best movies ever, and certainly one of the best movies of the decade in the 1990s. What I liked about it was, first, it didn't show aliens. It admitted that we made contact with intelligent aliens, but didn't imagine that you could even imagine what they would look like.
Right, yeah.
Because if they're aliens and they're intelligent from another planet, they should look more different from us than we look from any other life form on Earth with whom we have DNA in common. But you turn on a Hollywood movie, it's some creature walking towards you with a head, or, they give it antenna, or 3 eyes, or an almond-shaped head, or whatever. These are humanoids, excuse me. We got stuff on Earth that looks less like humans than the aliens do, and they're on Earth. You should worry if who walks out of the craft is like a lobster. Now you're talking, all right? Something, and I gotta tell you something else because let's just get it off my chest. I tweeted this once. Can I give my Twitter handle here?
Yeah,
I tweeted
Neil Tyson on Twitter.
Yeah, Twitter. No, at Neil Tyson. So I tweeted.
I'm gonna follow you starting right now.
It's just cool. Alien, the flying saucers. You notice they're all handicapped accessible. Have you noticed that? There's always a ramp. You never see aliens stumbling downstairs. So they were handicapped accessible before we had figured that one out.
Which means that there are lawyers who have sued in other universes for lack of accessibility. It's depressing almost.
But I got a question we throw around here on the show. You got humans on Earth, and there's nothing that comes close to us in intelligence and building stuff. Why is that?
Ooh.
That creeps me out.
Okay.
Because the rest of the animals on Earth, they sort of are in the same development stage, more or less. And then all of a sudden you get this huge jump and you get humans.
Okay. Are you prepared to receive what I'm about to tell you?
Oh, man. Fucking blow my mind.
Are you ready?
Yes.
First, that's a great thought to have because you see the distance we are intellectually from all other life forms on Earth.
Our joke,
let's get the closest life form, the chimpanzee, right?
But our joke is like, why isn't there like a squirrel at the bus stop with you in the morning?
I got you.
Okay.
I got you. I got this.
You're on this.
Are you ready?
Good. Yes.
Are you seated?
Yes.
Oh,
Okay.
man.
All right. So keep in mind here, who does the defining of what intelligence is?
Fair enough.
We define it.
I get it.
And we say, look how distant we are in intelligence from other creatures. Let's get the closest one to us intellectually. That would be perhaps the chimp, likely the chimp. And the chimp, what it can do, it can stack boxes and reach for the banana. It could do that, right? And I think some research has shown they can even put up an umbrella. They can do some rudimentary sign language. They got some of that.
They're adorable when you dress them in little engineer outfits.
With
Amazing. The hat.
And recognition of themselves, right? Isn't that considered a thing?
Yeah, in a mirror. Yeah, you can get some of that. So, and that's the closest to us. We share 99% identical DNA with a chimpanzee. But look what we do. We have philosophy, we have poetry, we have music, we have the Hubble telescope.
Right.
And the chimp ain't got jack. All right. So here's my question back to you.
Shit. Knew this was going to happen.
That's a quiz. Fuck.
Maybe the difference in our intelligence with the chimp is as small as that difference in DNA. Imagine, because the chimp, the smartest chimps that we bring forward, the primatologists bring forward, do what our toddlers can do. Our toddlers do what the smartest chimp does. Maybe that difference in intelligence is small. And how would you imagine this? Think of another life form we might stumble upon. That's that 0.5% difference in DNA beyond us. That same 0.5% difference that we are beyond the chimp. What thoughts would they have? They would roll Stephen Hawking forward and say, their humanologists would say, here's one that's slightly smarter than the rest because he can do astrophysics calculations in his head, like my little Timmy over here just came back from middle school or from preschool. If our toddlers do what chimps do, their toddlers will do what ours do. Right. And if you are that smart, the ability to build a Hubble telescope or put a stick in a termite mound to extract termites would look the same to someone who's that much smarter than we are. When you look at fish, are you contemplating how much smarter a catfish is than a minnow? You're not having those thoughts. For all we know, the catfish is brainy fish compared with in the fish world, but you don't care because you're so far beyond all of them. So my big worry is that aliens observing the universe will see us down here on Earth and conclude there is no sign of intelligent life anywhere.
We're all just lumped into the same dummies that run around like the dung beetle.
And exactly. So look at the cute thing. They have these little things called cars and planes and other spaceship. That's no different from the chimp, given what they're accomplishing. You don't walk down the street and contemplate what a worm is thinking.
Right. But why aren't they building shit like us?
Maybe they have and concluded we're not interesting. Or possibly we are their zoo.
Oh, yeah.
What do we do? You get penguins, you put them in, you throw some ice in the water, and you paint a glacier in the backdrop, drop the temperature, and how do we know that's not what we are to them?
Good Twilight Zone, that one was.
Exactly.
Yeah,
he knows.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Still, I think my favorite show of all time, Twilight Zone.
It's fantastic.
Yeah. So I lay awake at night, not only contemplating that, but wondering whether we are actually smart enough to figure out how the universe works. Why would we be the measure of anything that is smart? You know why? Because we defined what smart is. And here's the hubris of that. Here's an example I often give. You have a book called Optical Illusions. Who doesn't love a good optical illusion, right?
Crazy.
I care for them a lot.
Look at that. Which way is that facing? Whoa, now it's going the other way.
Exactly.
The staircase one? Oh, my God.
So here's...
Is it a vase or two people looking at each other?
Right. So here's what those books should be called. They should be called brain failures. Because that's what it is.
That's what our show should be called.
Brain Is it in the diagram? Is it longer or shorter? Oh, my gosh, I can't figure it out. But our hubris prevents us from confessing our own states of ignorance to ourselves.
But we are in. Do we have the ability to improve our own intelligence, right, through computers and all that stuff? And what they're talking about is like what Ray Kurzweil talked about, a Google that you just all of a sudden.
Yeah, I'm not fully convinced. He wants to say a year will come, the day will come where computers, the storage capacity, the computing power will be enough to rival and exceed perhaps the human mind's ability to do this. So you just upload your brain and then you become the computer and then your body doesn't matter anymore. And everything we know will be different after that day. And I'm just not, I gotta one day have a conversation. I might get him on StarTalk just to have a conversation with him to find out why he thinks this. Because we've been bested many times by things we've invented before. When the machine came, I'm plowing the back 40, with sweat equity, and someone says, here's a tractor. I'm using a tractor, and I'm staying at home drinking a beer. I don't have a problem that the tractor can do it better than I can. And we got computers that now beat us at chess, that beat the best chess player. We got Watson, who beat the best ever Jeopardy contestant.
But the computer that beat the chess player or Jeopardy can't plow the field.
Well, but they're our creations. That's
can't beat you at if you could lump all that into one thing. But then make it adaptable and able to grow.
Let that do the work, and I'll be in the Bahamas. Call me when you're done. I'm just saying. And to upload your mind, fine. But the idea that would still be you, I'm not convinced of that, because the things in my mind that are not you, we have different life experience. One of many things that distinguishes one person from another. I upload my mind, and then, like I said, I go to the Bahamas. I meet people. I have a nice dinner. Is the computer doing that? No.
Yeah.
It's not. So I continue to grow my life experience and my relationships, and what is it's stuck in the moment of when I uploaded what I gave it.
Right.
How could it continue to be more creative than I can be creative based on new information I've yet to learn that happened through my world line?
Isn't that in a way though?
The moment the computer is separated from you, it has a different world line.
Yes.
Isn't that looking at it like almost like there's an intangible thing? Like when you're saying that, like, isn't that almost giving credence to the fact, like, well, there's an intangible, a soul, or something that can't be quite accounted for?
So it would be if the way the science fiction vernacular takes it is, has the computer achieved consciousness, self-awareness, so that it makes decisions on its own without you even having programmed it in that way. Right now, computers do exactly what we tell it.
Right.
They do not what we want it to do, what we tell it to do, which are two different things here. So they do exactly what we tell it to do because we programmed them. So that was the interesting thing. I don't know if you saw Watson in action. So that one of the other contestants gives an answer, and it turns out to be the wrong answer. Watson is still calculating what the answer is, and he says, "Okay, Watson," and Watson gives the same answer as the other person gave. Watson hadn't figured out that if someone already gives an anscer and it's wrong, you don't give that answer.
Right. Any dummy would know that standing next to him.
Right.
Right. But it kind of opens up the thing. Is there a limit to the human mind? When you said, can we reach a point where we can't comprehend?
Since I can imagine a life form that has that same DNA difference advanced beyond us that we are from chimps, I am humbled by the brilliance that such a life form could bring to bear on solving problems, I mean, just look at how we like to say we're smart, but just look at the dumb stuff we do as a species all around the world. Hey, you're living on oil that I want. I'm going to kill you. Right? Meanwhile, the whole universe is overflowing with energy. Well, I'd be embarrassed if aliens came here to visit and they say, hey, how you guys doing with your energy? Well, we're still pulling fossil fuels out of the ground. I want stuff to be more proud of before I start showing off our civilization to intelligent aliens that happen to visit.
Yeah, don't be so eager to have them land here right now.
It's ridiculous. We continue to destroy each other and
and
everything on Earth. When you start really looking at how tiny Earth is compared to the rest of the universe.
And let's make everything warmer while we're at it. Right. And flood the coastlines. Yeah.
Speaking of Earth, how do you feel about the people that think it's only 6,000 years old?
If they think that, they think that because that is mandated by their religious philosophy.
Exactly.
Okay. Just keep it out of the science classroom. That's all. I don't try to confuse that with doing science. Science, we have learned. Science has completely transformed our culture. It's doubled our life expectancy. It has brought comfort and health and well-being. And not only science, but the fruits of science, the technological fruits of science. And of course, you need to be good shepherds of this power because in the wrong hands, it could be used for evil. All right. This is the great sort of dichotomy of of unlocking the secrets of nature. Mm-hmm. So I'm not going to fight them to tell them the universe is not
just 6,000 stay out of your way.
No, not just the science classroom. Right. No. And if you want to put it in the science classroom, understand the ramifications.
Right.
Your country will go bankrupt because you will no longer be in a position to forge the economies of tomorrow that will require science and technological innovations.
And it leads to the next question, because a few people on the lines are asking, do you believe in God?
I'm not convinced. If here's the thing. If every time I talk about God with someone who's a believer, God is all powerful and all knowing and all good, right? The good is a big part of this. Mm-hmm. And then I look at all the ways Earth wants to kill us.
Strangle us.
A tsunami takes out 250,000 people, hurricanes, earthquakes, tornadoes, floods. And I add all of that up. Either the God is not all powerful or is not all good. But it can't really be both, given all the ways the universe wants to kill us. And if Earth is not finished killing you, there's the asteroid that could come in. Right. An asteroid rendered 70% of all life forms extinct. Back in that's the famous one in 65 million years ago that took out the dinosaurs. So there's so many ways to die, not at the hands of someone else who has free will. Mm-hmm. That I don't know what is the nature of the God that you're talking about.
I gotta try to use your logic back at you. Uh-huh. But don't we define what is good and what is bad? So we see a tsunami wipe out a whole bunch of people, and we're as human beings going, wow, that's bad, because we define what bad is. Maybe in God's brain, eyes, whatever the hell, that's not bad.
Well, but except you defined what God is.
Oh boy!
Wow,
now you did it.
That's
so. Why do you have the power to define who and what God is,
right,
but not have the power to define what good is?
Yeah, my point is we just don't know it all. Not even close.
Oh, sure. So therefore, if you're going to say God actually is good, and 250,000 people dying from an earthquake and a tsunami and other natural disasters, right, and God presumably has control over that, and God is good, then you have to then say God works in mysterious ways, right?
There you go.
That's that. But people only say that when their understanding of God fails them.
When
right?
it's something bad.
No, when they can't understand it, they say, well, God works in mysterious ways. But somehow, in these other ways, you did understand him.
Right.
How are you saying, well, this is the handiwork of God? You're doing God's work. God wants you to do this. Somehow you know God's motives every other way. Mm-hmm. But when 250,000 people get wiped out, God works in mysterious ways. Mm-hmm. Why do you even claim to have access to God's mind in some contexts and not others?
Oh, exactly.
Just admit you have no clue and get on with life. That's how I look at it.
We just don't have a clue when it comes down to it.
Well, I'd like to think that preserving health and longevity, that is a nice operational definition of something that's good.
Right.
How can you argue? How can you debate something that keeps you alive and healthy? That's got to be something that's good. I can't. I refuse to allow someone to say, "I'm going to give you cancer, birth defects, and shorten your life," and somehow call that good. I'm not going there.
I hear you.
I'm not going there.
What do you think happens when you die?
Didn't we have that part of the conversation earlier in the show? Were you not paying attention?
No, but
I said I go into Earth, and my
that's
body,
it, right?
My body's energy is handed over to.
Yeah, I heard you loud and clear.
No, we can measure that. If you want to say something more than that happens, you have to step out of objective realities and then believe what happens on faith. And people have faith in a lot of things. I don't have an issue with that. But I know I can measure that I have energy content, and a worm is going to capture that energy, and a plant is going to capture the decomposed carbon dioxide that comes out of my body. That's going to happen.
And that's not going to satisfy any of us as far as our lives go.
No, but it means your energy lives on in other life forms on Earth.
I know.
I personally find that quite satisfying. And has the benefit of being objectively verifiable.
Nice.
I have a question about asteroids or comets, because since Shoemaker-Levy hit Jupiter,
you guys are up on all Shoemaker.
Man.
He just this is. Can I inform your audience? Shoemaker-Levy. That's a comet discovering team.
I thought it was a law firm.
I think we were sued by them once.
What happened?
There's David Levy and Eugene and Carolyn Shoemaker are comet hunters.
Yeah.
And in fact, they discovered an asteroid, a comet and asteroid hunters. They discovered an asteroid that I was so honored that they named in my honor. They proposed it. It was accepted. There's asteroid 13123 Tyson that team discovered. And I'm quite honored by it. I had to double check it's not headed towards Earth.
Yeah, right. That would suck.
Okay, now I happily accept the honor.
That would be a good one.
So they discovered a comet that had broken apart and was on a collision course with Jupiter, and in fact, it slammed into Jupiter back in the 1990s.
and it was amazing.
And we observed it from Earth.
Amazing footage. There's this big black spot where it hit, and they said it would have ruined it. It was the size of the Earth, the little spot that it
Yeah, the entire scar on Jupiter was bigger than the planet Earth.
Holy shit.
Why is that?
And so whatever's true, there's no dinosaurs left on Jupiter.
I'm fascinated with that, and the fact there's that red storm on Jupiter. How come, if that red storm is just a weather system, we still see it? Why isn't it? And why is that spot still as it was 25 years ago?
No, the spot's long gone.
Oh, is it? I thought it was still there.
Spot's, no.
Okay.
The spot's long gone. Now, what's cool about the spot, this is an impact scar left in the atmosphere of Jupiter, because there was the energy of the collision completely wreaks havoc in the local area of the atmosphere. But here's what's cool. There were 24 or so chunks of this comet that had broken apart on a previous bypass to Jupiter. Jupiter's gravity disrupted the physical body of the comet, and it created this long train of 24 pieces. Here's what's cool. When the first piece hit, the next piece does not hit in the same spot because Jupiter rotates. So you got to see every successive scar as they hit Jupiter's surface. As Jupiter rotates twice as fast as Earth does, by the way. And so you got to see the simple fact that Jupiter rotates as these pieces, all otherwise hitting the same spot in space.
Right,
but a different
on the
location
planet's surface,
on Jupiter's surface. So those have gone away. Jupiter's red spot, we've been seeing that for the last 300 or 400 years. It's a sustained weather system that still is a bit of a mystery.
And has it not? Maybe I just.
By the way, we don't know. We don't have a full. We have some provisional answers for how you can sustain a weather system that long, but the universe continues to brim with mysteries.
And why should it be, relative to our life?
Right. Yeah.
Thank you. Right.
It's
think about it. We have hurricanes that last weeks, for sure. All right, and that's on Earth, which is tiny, and we don't rotate as fast. So now we have Jupiter, which is, Jupiter is 10 times wider than we are as a planet, rotates twice as fast, is mostly gas. All right, so Jupiter, give it some space here to do whatever it wants to with its weather.
I mean, to a mayfly, the hurricanes here last a lifetime. You know,
That's
He's getting philosophical. He's getting deep here.
Now, we sent the probe to Jupiter, and I guess it fell down and then got crushed.
No, it didn't fall. Oh, yes, you could say literally, yes, it did fall, but that was on purpose. We didn't.
Yeah.
It didn't accidentally. Oops.
Well, parachuted in, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Once you're done with your spacecraft, why don't you leave one last experiment to find out what happens as it plunges into through the surface? That's right.
How far
It'll
down?
ultimately get crushed by the pressure.
How far down would you make it before you got
A human being?
Yeah.
You would suffocate in the vacuum of space before you got to that point. But ignoring that complication,
Yeah, on a ship or something.
Okay, you go in. Well, it depends on how structurally stable your ship is or your skull is. But I mean, it's not. You don't have to think about Jupiter to answer this. You just say what kind of pressure. You can think about it in the ocean. What kind of pressure would totally crush your body? And you can't go too far down with it, like the Titanic. Miles down below the surface. The weight of the water above you would just crush you like a pancake. Like a crepe.
Yeah, the weight of
The
all that
pancake's too thick.
atmosphere.
You need something thinner.
Yeah.
And what is it?
Right, because we have atmospheric pressure here on Earth's surface. It's 15 pounds per square inch. Here's something you might not have known. If you press a suction cup and you try to lift it up, you can't because it has suction. Well, there's no such thing as suction. What's happening is you took away the air beneath it that was balancing the pressure all around it. Now you're lifting the entire column of atmospheric weight that's sitting on top of your suction cup.
Yeah.
And if your suction cup is 4 square inches, it's 4 times 15 pounds per square inch. You have to lift 60 pounds of force upwards to pop it off the table.
Before it comes off.
And you say, look, it's sucking itself down. No, the atmosphere is pressing down on you. So now you go underwater. You have not only the weight of the air on top of the water, you have the weight of the water on top of you.
Yeah,
and water is heavier than air, denser than air.
A lot of people get that backwards all the time, that it's suction, but it's actually pressure. And
yeah, and they say, nature abhors a vacuum. No, most of the universe is a vacuum.
It's a vacuum.
Nature just loves vacuums. It's your limited worldview that tells you that nature somehow hates the absence of air.
Yeah.
So I'm fascinated too with the Voyager, which is I remember my science teacher in high school, Stanley Buttcavage, told us that
What a name to have
that
for a
was his name.
teacher. Wow, the abuse.
But he made such a big deal of the fact when Voyager 1 left, I want to say our solar system, which I guess was when I was a freshman in high school, which I guess is 82. And now, whereabout is it? Didn't it just reach another milestone?
Well, it depends on how you define the solar system. Generally, when you learn the solar system in elementary school, it's the enumeration of the planets. Back in our day, Pluto would have been in that list. No longer. So you could say when Voyager passes the orbit of Neptune, the last of the 8 planets, it has left the solar system. But wait a minute, there's a new swath of real estate discovered beyond Neptune, which is what got Pluto into trouble. It's a swath of icy bodies with the same composition and orbits as Pluto.
Right.
And so that's called the Kuiper belt of comets. Maybe you have to wait till it gets past that. Well, Voyager, got past that. All right. And so it's kept going. And since then, it has passed the sun's the influence of the sun's magnetic field on all the particles that float around in space. And it has crossed into the magnetic field of the galaxy. And that's what made headlines just recently, which would have been much later than when you were in high school, of course, that they were probably finding some other boundary of the solar system to reference.
Yeah, maybe it was when it passed Pluto or something. I don't remember.
It's the launch.
No, I think when did it go up in like 77 or something?
Oh, when it was launched, 1977. That's correct.
that's fine.
Voyager 1 and 2, yeah.
And they said it's being powered by something that's like a little light bulb, like worth of power.
Oh, yeah. I forgot, what is it, 10 watts or so? Very, very low wattage. Yeah. Dimmer, lower energy consumption than your refrigerator light.
That's amazing.
So, yeah, that's what's powering the whole thing. And it has 70K of memory.
Nice.
Ooh, that was you were talking back. That was
hell yeah.
back in the 70s. You got a date if you had 70K of memory.
Yikes.
And what?
No, we all know a Klingon took target practice on it, though. Right? Do that? Star Trek? No? Anyone?
A Voyager?
Watch Star Trek? Or Voyager, yeah.
Yeah, there's Voyager in Star Trek, in the original Star Trek. What gets me about Voyager? I assume people have seen the movie. Voyager, it was Voyager that apparently the OYA was rusted over in the Voyager, and Voyager had acquired all knowledge of the universe, achieved consciousness, and then came back to look for its creator.
Right.
And that freaked out the crew because it was messing with Earth. And I'm just thinking, if it acquired all the knowledge of the universe, why didn't it know its name was Voyager? You'd think it would have figured that out.
Yeah,
okay. And also, just to be fair, that was Voyager 6, not either the Voyager 1 or 2.
What age did you realize that you comprehended this stuff? Because math for me is never. It's why I'll never be a great chess player. I'll always be average. Because math for me is very difficult. But there's a way to comprehend it where you just it resonates with you, and I've never been able to.
No, it's people think you're just born and wake up and then you comprehend it. No, you work at it. I mean, go to any Olympic gold medalist; they work at it. They didn't just wake up that morning and get a gold medal. So yeah, the universe is complex. It's large. It's awesome. It's terrifying in its infinitude. And what matters is that you are drawn to it. You are seduced by it. It is the seduction of the unknown that gets me out of the bed each morning to ask, how do I now learn how that works? Either learn how it works in ways that other people have already discovered. All right. That's what you do while you're in school. But then you get to the PhD, and then you've learned what everyone else knows. You have one foot in what is known and one foot in what is unknown. You're at the perimeter of ignorance. And as we say, as the perimeter, as the area of your knowledge grows, so too does your perimeter of ignorance. So knowing doesn't always mean there's less to learn. Sometimes it means there's more to discover.
I think that's a side of the brain, though. That, you're not born with necessarily the knowledge, but I think the gift or the ability, because
you're not born with any knowledge other than the instinct to suck.
Which I've made a career out of.
I was being literal, not figurative. Okay. We have a couple of instincts that are in us, and to the woman, the sucking baby is pleasurable. So if it hurt, we would go extinct really quickly early on in the species.
Yeah.
So there are factors in play that make making more babies pleasurable, and other than that, we learn what's going on in our environment.
But when you're a kid and you're knowing this stuff, is that like...
I was 11 when I figured out this is really cool. I want to learn more of it.
And there's an interest, too. Like, if you're interested in it and want to know more, it's like if you're interested in playing a guitar, you're going to pick it up and screw with it every day of your life.
Same thing. And then you learn how other people play, and then one day you're really good at it, and then you invent a new genre,
way of
way of doing it. And my first exposure to the universe was at age 9, a first visit to the Hayden Planetarium.
But I got to ask this question. So when you're really young, 9 years old, can you either choose the guitar or learning about the universe?
Did you see?
Or are you more prone to
Depends
go?
on how much you want to get laid.
or is your brain wired enough to where you're going to be prone more to go for the guitar?
Well, first, I think the geek is the new football quarterback. Okay, and look at how many people go to Comic-Con. Just you look at the rise of what is the number one sitcom on television? It is The Big Bang Theory. So I think there's a changing in the. I think you know why? It's because you need your geeks to fix your computer at the end of the day, or to invent the computer that you want for tomorrow. And in principle, a football quarterback could do that, but generally, the history of them is that they're not that person. But my point was when I was going to make a really deep point.
When you were 11,
about the guitar and the universe. You choose?
Do you remember? There's a Gary Larson comic. It showed Jimi Hendrix as a young boy.
Okay,
and he's walking up to the music store, and the accordion shop is closed, but the guitar shop is still open. And then disaster averted.
That's funny.
Wait a minute, that was a Ziggy.
That's funny.
So you think that it's something that you learn? I still think it's a side of it. There's something.
I think there's something in your brain
because I can never look at math. Like maybe I didn't work hard enough at it, but I cannot.
I think you're born with some kind of ability, but and hopefully you find that. There's probably people out there that would have been great math minds, but for whatever reason didn't find that spark.
They took a wrong turn. Right. The world line missed an opportunity. Here's what I'll tell you. When you realize that if you go to China and you want to speak to the Chinese, you got to learn Chinese. And any language expert will tell you it takes several years to get really fluent. And ideally, you should move there and immerse yourself. And if you don't move there, it might take you 5 years. Move there 2 or 3 years. In either case, it takes years to even just get comfortable with it. When I look at the universe and you realize that the language of the universe is mathematics, and I want to have a conversation with the universe, I'm learning the math. And look at the symbols of math. They're not, I don't think it's that different from learning a completely different alphabet and having to communicate in Cyrillic or Thai or Chinese characters. Think about it. They're expressing ideas in a complete other iconography. And so, not iconography, what do you call a character set. And so that's what math is. It is expressing yourself in a completely different character set. And there are rules. We have rules in English. The verb goes here, the noun goes there, you conjugate it this way. Math has rules.
Yeah, but there's not a third of a verb. If you had to have a fraction of a verb, I'm finished.
No, but you do have fractions of words.
Yes.
Okay.
Fractions.
Okay. There are words that are compound words, and one of the things you learn in elementary school is that some words are composed of others.
I think people think of the difference between like writing and math as it's more abstract if you look at writing and English and language. But if you break it down into the actual letters and the rules of a language, it isn't as abstract. The tools.
Yeah, I think a linguist would probably argue with you, but I'd have to agree that the rules of math are unassailable, basically.
Yeah, they're more definite.
Yes.
But the rules of writing, there are certain rules you have to adhere to that isn't that creative kind of abstract part of writing.
And that part of writing, I'm claiming, has a similar kind of, I don't want to say rigidity, but a formality as what you find in mathematics.
But with those tools, you could make very creative and very abstract ideas.
Well,
but
no, you can do it with math too. So here's the thing. So math is a language, all right? Math is not the destination, it's a path. So when I have an idea about the universe and I represent it mathematically, if my idea is accurate, I can manipulate the math and make a discovery that the math enabled because it is a logical representation of the idea. What humans are not good at is thinking logically, using words. Whereas if you represent the words and your ideas with math, then you manipulate the math. That's a way to manipulate the idea with the perfect logic that mathematics endows you, the power and that mathematics endows you with. And upon doing so, you use the math to come up with whole new ideas about the universe. And so that's how a great writer would use the language to come up with a whole new way of telling a story or a whole new way to develop a character. And take, for example, the movie Inception. That was a completely different new way to talk about a plot line and folding time and the pace of time. Is that the right movie, Inception? No.
Isn't it Inception where they're going back off the van? Yeah, you don't know if it's real or if it's not real.
Or whether it's a thought or not.
Right,
That's a whole, it takes a creative person to take the leap from a boy meets girl and they fall in love and end of story.
Even with the rigid rules of mathematics, you could use that to tell an abstract story about the universe.
Well, so in a rarer case, you advance mathematics this way.
Right.
But more typically, you're using quote, ordinary math to advance physics, to advance our understanding of nature. And occasionally you do invent a new math. Isaac Newton said, someone asked him, hey, Ike, why do planets orbit in these ellipses, these flattened circles, rather than perfect circles? Because he had a theory that showed ellipses. But someone asked him why, and he couldn't answer it. He said, I'll get back to you. So he goes home, comes back a few months later, here's why. Because there are conic sections, you cut a cone and you get an ellipse, a circle, a parabola, hyperbola. And they said, well, how did you come up with this? He said, well, I had to invent integral and differential calculus, and that then enabled me to solve this. So he invented a branch of mathematics to solve a problem in physics. So occasionally you get 2 for 1. You get a new physics problem solved, and it required new math if you're smart enough.
Sounds like he was wagging the dog on that one.
And more shit we have to learn in high school.
Yeah, that's true.
Thanks, Isaac. Thanks a lot.
You prick.
Really? How about I don't know every once in a while? Neil, this was great.
I got to run.
Yeah, this was great.
I just want to take a drive with you and pester you with questions. Like, I just want to keep
That's just what I want to do too. Drive with you. That's my idea of an ideal day, right?
And all day you're just going, wow.
I think you think about physics a lot when you're driving in the winter on icy roads. I'm constantly thinking of friction.
We don't think about friction as an active
centrifugal force. All this shit when you're driving on the ice is like, okay, here comes a curve, and you can almost picture what the mass of your vehicle will do in a certain situation.
Yeah, and the reason why you slide off the curve at a certain speed on a slippery road is because the curve is not banked high enough to keep you
right now.
there.
The friction between
like in NASCAR,
wheels.
for example. You know, have you been on a NASCAR track?
It's ridiculous.
The camera doesn't capture.
Right. No, TV doesn't do it justice.
TV does not really capture the actual slope of that.
It's unbelievable.
So you can do the physics of this, and you can say at what speed is the ideal. What is the ideal speed for the car to have for this bank of a turn? And you find out what that speed is. And it depends on the track and the track conditions and the size of the track. But you can bank a curve so that at 200 miles an hour, it is completely stable going around the curve. Now, here's the thing. People say NASCAR people only know how to turn left. Well, it's not really true. If the bank has the perfect angle for your speed, it is the bank that turns your car and not you.
Right. You can keep pretty much straight.
Not pretty much. You can just never turn the wheel, and you can go in perfect circles for having done so. If the bank is at the right angle for the speed that you're driving. So that allows the driver to only have to steer to maneuver among other cars rather than to steer to stay on the track.
I mean, obviously, if you think about a car going fast enough to stay on a 90-degree bank, let's say.
Oh, that's the speed of light.
That's the speed of light.
Yes.
On a 90-degree
There is
bank.
we got that one. That's the speed of light. All right, you with me on that? All right, so
without any like degradation of
it would fall.
It would fall. Right.
Yeah, you need the speed
At
of
some
light on
point.
that one.
Wow,
yeah.
that's hilarious.
Oh, Neil, that's too fast for me to be driving. But listen,
We got to get Neil out
I
of
could
here.
just talk about this
is
all
it,
day.
how do you say
Goddammit.
it's DeGrasse or
No, that's silent E. That's
it is?
not
Okay.
DeGrasse High. You know, right? Yeah. No, DeGrasse Tyson. But you
I
just call
should
me
have known
Neil.
that, but
That's
I'm
fine. Thank you.
Just get rid of that E. We don't need that. All right, Neil deGrasse Tyson, an amazing
You always
guest.
I wanted a numeral in my name because there's a silent 3. You know, something just to mess with people.
Like Dead Mouse, but it's a 5 at the end.
Yeah.
Neil Tyson on Twitter. And again, November 4th, Monday night at 8 o'clock, StarTalk Live. So I guess you're doing your live podcast. Just a fascinating
Every now and then we do a live version of it right at Town Hall.
That's with Eugene Merman?
Eugene Merman does. Yeah, that will be with Eugene Merman. Yeah,
Okay.
really funny guy.
Yeah, he's a buddy of mine. He's very, very funny. And you get that at Ticketmaster, and you're a fascinating man. To go see you at Town Hall, I think would be great.
All right, thanks
Thank
for
you
the
very much.
plug.
Absolutely.
All right, guys.
Coming in, love it.
Thanks. You hadn't ever called before. Now
This is stupid.
You
We
never
should
called.
call a
You
long
never
time ago.
wrote. You
What the
never.
hell are we thinking?
Well, now we are what happened?
World lines have intersected.
Okay.
Oh, damn.
And they will intersect again.
All right. All right, guys.
man.
Thanks, Neil.
All right.
The Opie and Anthony Show, Sirius XM. All right, well, that sucked. To hear the Opie and Anthony Show 5 days a week live on satellite radio, online on your phone or tablet, or even on demand, go to SiriusXM.com. Also, interact with the Opie and Anthony Show on Twitter, @Opie Radio, @Anthony Cumia, and @Jim Norton.